It's tourney time, madness and mayhem with Dalen Cuff. We'll break it all down. Plus, free agency frenzy continues. The best, the worst, and what is yet to come. And, of course, crown that man. The MVP looked like the MVP. Yahoo Sports Daily starts right now. She's Caroline Fenton. I'm Jason Fitz. For the next 2 hours, we're rack stacked, packed, ready to get you rolling for Yahoo Sports Daily. We have got a ton to get to, including the sort of NBA game that just reminds you how great the regular season can be. We'll get to all of that. Dalen Cuff going to join us in a bit. We'll talk to him about March Madness. Tons to get to, but Caroline Fenton yesterday was wild. Injected in my veins. Free agency frenzy began for the NFL, and it was chaos. It was like a roller coaster ride. Couldn't figure out who was coming next, where they were coming from. Money just being thrown out. Everyone. So let's get to some of the big moves. I mean, just big, massive. Congratulations.
Payday.
Yeah, I love it when people get paid. And yesterday was good. Lord, just got dinners on a lot of people after yesterday. Let's start with some of the big transactions. So Mike Evans, I think this one shocked a lot of people. Mike Evans signs a 3-year, $60.4 million with ... San Francisco. We just presumed Mike Evans was going to go back to Tampa Bay, and he did not. What'd that say to you?
Well, I wanted so badly for Mike Evans to go back to Tampa Bay because I love it when a guy who is so loyal to an organization and expresses a want to stay there forever and to play for one team for their entire career. I always want that for them. I always think that's a very special and unique thing. But when I saw that Mike Evans was going to San Francisco, frankly, Fitz, I love this. I love this so much. And it could be very, very easy for anyone to say, okay, so an old and injured team just signed a 32-year-old receiver coming off of a collarbone and hamstring injury who is only available for 8 games. Fair, valid, totally fine reaction. But I think the pairing of Mike Evans and what he poses as a red zone threat, his body, his physical presence, combined with Kyle Shanahan's offensive genius, sign me up for this Mike Evans and 49ers pairing. I love this. I kind of view it, Fitz. It seemed very reminiscent to me of the Rams bringing in Davante Adams, a high character, reliable veteran receiver who is no longer a 1, used to be a 1 in their prime, is no longer a 1, but he doesn't have to be. Ricky Pearsall is still in the building. He will still be the 49ers number 1 and kind of go-to guy. He fills a need at the receiver position that the Rams had when they brought Davante Adams in, but now you don't have Brandon Ayuk, Juwan Jennings. This is clearly a move that Juwan Jennings will not be in San Francisco next year. So it fills a need, and it's a red zone guy. He's a weapon. He's a chess piece because that's just the kind of receiver that Mike Evans is. He is a weapon that Kyle Shanahan can use, whether it's as a receiver, whether it's as a decoy, whether it's as a blocker, whether it's just as a big body presence. I love this pairing, Fitz.
Yeah, look, I love a lot about this, particularly San Francisco has watched the Rams get so much better, and they just watched the Seahawks win a Super Bowl. So being aggressive didn't surprise me at all from San Francisco. I think the most surprising part about this transaction is that Mike Evans just said the quiet thing loudly to the entire league. Mike Evans just told the entire NFL that Tampa Bay is not on the precipice of taking that next step. Because in my mind, if you believe that, when you think about the money that this is not irreplaceable money. I'm sure he could have gotten comparable, if not the same money out of Tampa Bay. So why go to San Francisco? Well, at this stage in his career, why change everything? You change everything because what you really want is the opportunity to win a Super Bowl. And clearly he didn't believe that was going to happen in Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay, even in a division that we often perceive, although that may be changing, we often perceive the division as soft. And even as a team that I feel like every year we're saying, no, this is the year Tampa Bay takes a big step forward. If Mike Evans believed that was really about to happen, I don't think he walks and goes all the way to San Francisco. I think he made a very clear statement to the league yesterday that what he wants is the chance at a Super Bowl, and where he thinks he can do that is not in Tampa Bay. Now, is it really San Francisco? I don't know. I think they need a lot of new weapons considering some of the things that have happened to their wide receiver room, and considering the fact that they can't stay healthy as a team. These are detriments to San Francisco. But Mike Evans looked around all of those warts of San Francisco and said, I still think that is a better Super Bowl situation than where I am right now. That's telling to where the Tampa Bay Buccaneers actually are. Maybe it's time to recalibrate our conversation about Tampa Bay. Let's take a look at another.
Well, is he wrong?
No, I don't think he's wrong. I just think because we all love Baker.
The Bucs didn't even win their own crap division last year.
But you know, by the time we get to August, if Mike Evans is back, we're like, oh no, the Buccaneers could be that. Like, you know what I mean? Like, that's what we do every year with Bucs and with Baker. We always try and squeeze them into a conversation like they're better than they are.
But they're not. And I think that's what I learned, at least last year, is I talked about Tampa Bay as a potential Super Bowl contender. They didn't even make the playoffs. They didn't even win the NFC South, and that division sucked. No disrespect to our Carolina Panthers here on the show. So I don't blame Mike Evans, and that is making the assumption that the Buccaneers offered Mike Evans an attractive enough deal for him to come back. But I don't blame Mike Evans for that in the slightest. Even with the 49ers playing in the deepest and most competitive division in all of football last season, I still think the 49ers have a clearer path to the Super Bowl than the Bucs do.
Yeah, there's no doubt. From teams with a clear path to teams with no path to the Super Bowl right now, but having a big day yesterday. Oh, that would be in the form of Tyler Linderbaum getting a massive market resetting contract. It's a 3-year, $81 million deal with Las Vegas. The center comes over, and the contract's been broken down many times at this point. $60 million of it is guaranteed. The remaining is guaranteed so early in the deal. This is almost the equivalent of a 3-year fully guaranteed deal. It is shocking to some in the league because 3 years means he's going to have the chance to get back to free agency at the age of 28. All of these things reset the market. An interior offensive lineman has never made this much money, to which I say, huzzah! Look, I don't care. I don't care about Mark Davis's money. I don't care if Mark Davis spends every billion that he somehow managed to make by being the owner of the Raiders. I don't care if he ends up in a cardboard box because he spent everything he had trying to make this team better. So now that we've established that, what do I want? Man, I want one of the best centers in the game if I'm about to have a rookie quarterback, and the Raiders are about to have a rookie quarterback. I want a center that I know that can be the quarterback of the offensive line. I want a young guy that gets to the market. It's so rare for young talent to get to free agency. Baltimore had a very weird set of circumstances, started by not picking up his fifth-year option, by not putting themselves in a situation where they could franchise him. The Lamar contract, they had all these difficulties that created a firestorm that took Linderbaum to the market. I had heard repeatedly from people around the team that they were going to be aggressive. This was more than aggressive. This was a flat-out statement by the Raiders coming out and saying, we're going to insulate Fernando Mendoza from day one, and we're going to take something off his plate from day one with this team by getting one of the best in the league, even if we have to overpay. I don't care about the contract, Caroline. I'm on cloud nine with this.
You shouldn't care about the contract. When I heard this, I said, I am so happy for two of my favorite men who have names that start with F, Fitz and Fernando, because I talked about this. When you have a rookie quarterback, your number one priority, and the Raiders are no different, your number one priority should be to create the most healthy and supportive ecosystem possible for that young quarterback. What's the best thing to give a young quarterback? One, it's protection. And the Raiders needed desperately to upgrade the offensive line. I mean, my goodness. Fitz and I were in line to play offensive line for the Raiders this past season. And a center who can, read coverages, who can be there for a young quarterback, who can provide a lot of support for a young quarterback. And look, is a lot of money? Yeah, but so what? Like, the Raiders have the most cap space in the entire NFL. And in free agency, you are inevitably going to overpay, period. That's just the nature of free agency. And in free agency, what you typically overpay for is a guy who's older or injured or has some character concerns. Tyler Linderbaum is one of the best centers in the NFL. In the peak of his prime, doesn't have any extracurriculars or off-the-field issues or injury issues that'll make you overly concerned. So of course the Raiders overpaid. Of course the Raiders had to give a blank check to Tyler Linderbaum and say, literally, what do you want? We will give it to you. But I think it's worth it. Why not? You are in the position to pay. You are in a position to push all of your chips in the middle to build your roster over the next 5+ years. Tyler Linderbaum, I think, is the perfect start to that. I love this move. I'm so happy for Fernando Mendoza, Fitzy.
Yeah, I mean, this is going to be great for a young quarterback that absolutely gets insulation from day one. I don't think you could put enough value on it. All right, what about guys that haven't come off the market? Those are two of the biggest names, and trust me, in a little bit we'll go through biggest winners and losers through all of this. But I think it's a little shocking right now as we sit today, as we're taping this right now, 9 in the morning on Tuesday. Trey Hendrickson not yet signed anywhere. And Caroline, I heard this morning Shefty talking about the fact that, hey, this comes down to several teams are talking to him, but he's seen some of the market value out there for other guys like Jalen Phillips, and he thinks he's in that same category. He's a very stubborn negotiator. He's not willing to take less than he thinks he's worth. I think we're seeing what's been going on behind the scenes in Cincinnati for the last couple of years go on right now very publicly with the entire league. I'm not sure the league values Trey Hendrickson the same way Trey Hendrickson values himself. And that's okay, but if he wants to keep playing, there's going to have to be a happy medium met somewhere.
Yeah, look, Trey Hendrickson, get your bag. Hold out for what you feel like you deserve. I'll never tell a player that they have to sign for less than what they feel like they deserve. But also, just like how teams have to overpay in free agency, if you are not one of the most highly coveted players in the market, and I view Trey Hendrickson as one of the most highly coveted players in the market, but here we are Tuesday morning at 9:11 a.m., and Trey Hendrickson still doesn't have a home for next season. So sometimes there are certain things that free agents may need to, compromise on in order to, whether it's money or whether it's signing with a contender, if you want to be in a dome stadium or not, if you want to be in a certain city, like whatever it might be in your list of stipulations. Sometimes there are compromises that players have to make too, not just teams. So I do wonder for Trey Hendrickson, is money the number one thing? Is winning the number one thing? Like, does Trey Hendrickson want to go to a contender? Because there have been a lot of reports that the Tennessee Titans have been interested in Trey Hendrickson. Well, I always say a team like the Titans, a team like the Raiders, a team like the Browns, you have to pay what I call the suck tax. Because when a player is a free agent and they can go anywhere, and you're a bad team, you got to sweeten the pot a little bit. You got a little lanyap, a little something extra to make that player interested. Well, if the Titans are willing to overpay for Trey Hendrickson, but he doesn't want to go to Tennessee because he wants to go to a contender, well, then that's a completely different story. So I do wonder why are we where we are right now? Why were there players flying off the board yesterday in free agency, yet Trey Hendrickson remains unsigned and at the top of the free agent rankings everywhere? Is it because the league does not value Trey Hendrickson, or is it because Trey Hendrickson has a very picky, set of stipulations that he wants to find in his next team, which I don't blame him. He is in the twilight of his career. He's more football behind him than he has ahead of him. So is it a Trey Hendrickson problem, or is it a league problem?
It's also interesting to me because what the league values is at times a little confusing. Like, we value sacks so much. And I'll go to a player a few years ago, everybody may remember, but Yannick Ngakoue, who played for the Jags, the Raiders, the Colts, played for several teams. But at one point, he went through a period where he had 12 sacks, 9.5 sacks, 8 sacks. Then he goes to the Raiders, he has 10 sacks. Immediately goes to the Colts, has 9.5 sacks. Those are big sack numbers, and there never really seemed to be a market. Everybody was comfortable just trading away, cutting away, and just letting Yannick go wherever he goes. Like, it just never felt like, even though his sack numbers are pretty surprising for a player we don't think about in that light, what we saw was that the league didn't really value that. I don't know yet what the league values with Trey. This just matches sort of the consistency of what we've thought for a long time. I feel bad in this situation, genuinely, for Trey Hendrickson, who has waited for now 2 years to have his chance to hit the open market. I'm sure he had some sort of expectation on what yesterday would look like. And much like when we watch players fall in the draft, I get no joy out of that. I think it's heartbreaking. When a player thinks that they're going to hit the market and be that coveted guy, I feel bad for him when it doesn't happen. It would be rare to see, as we saw yesterday, $30 and $40 million type contracts going out to people that impact the passer. It would be rare to see that kind of money go out today. So now you're right. Now we're starting to stack together all of the other, what is Trey looking for? And we'll see. He could be one of the first names out today, and certainly nobody can actually sign their official contracts till Wednesday. So there's still plenty of time for Trey Hendrickson to make some noise in the market, but it is surprising that somebody that was rated number one on many free agent boards is one of the few big names that's still standing after yesterday's chaos. We will keep you caught up on all of the chaos today, including some winners and losers coming up. But we also had a bunch of quarterback news yesterday, which brings us to trying to figure out what's the right timing on breaking in a quarterback, giving up on a quarterback, bringing in new quarterbacks. Some strange philosophies being shown yesterday. We'll talk about it next.
Well, one of the things, too, that keeps coming up, I keep hearing, and it kept coming up in response to my story after the hearing and during the hearing, is, hey, why doesn't he just go pro? Imagine being a college kid and making $5 million plus.
It's pretty easy. It's just money, guys. It's guaranteed money. This is probably, for most of these individuals, the last time they can make this much money playing the sport.
How can I sit here in one breath and say the sport is broken when it looks like the audience is more pleased with the sport than ever?
It's not broke. It's just we've been drinking out of a fire hose for 3 years. But it can't just be pay them, kick them off the team, next guy, next team. I worry about these kids' long-term health and what they're going to do with their lives when they're 26 and 27, when they have no roots at any university.
James Rodriguez is reportedly joining Minnesota United. The main thing, as a fan of the league, I would just be excited to see him play. And then Minnesota against NYCFC, get to go see James. And what if that game is at Citi Field, bro? Queens is going to lose their mind.
It's going to go nuts. Astoria and Jackson Heights will be empty. There will be 3 Uruguayans, 4 Argentinians, and 6 Mexicans in all of Jackson Heights going, what the hell's going on? Where is everybody?
Admittedly, I'm a huge fan of Travis Hunter as a prospect. Do you have any sense of what his growth is going to be like, where he might be playing more and more, what his role is going to look like, especially on the offensive side?
The way he is, his personality, I think this injury in rookie year is only going to just make him better. He was starting to really get going on offense, and we were starting to click. So who knows what the rep count looks like, but I know he's a special receiver when he gets the ball in his hands.
The Dolphins made news yesterday with a full switch at the quarterback position. Of course, they had already cut Tua Tagovailoa, but then they brought in Malik Willis on a 3-year, $67.5 million deal with $45 million of that fully guaranteed. This realigns Malik Willis with Jeff Hafley, the new head coach for the Miami Dolphins, who, remember, had been the defensive coordinator for the last few years for the Green Bay Packers. So nobody in the world knows Willis better than the coach that's been going against him every single day in practice. This is sort of a strange bit of news yesterday because we also got news Tua plans on signing a 1-year deal with the Falcons. So a lot of shifting on Dolphins quarterbacks as we try and figure out what all of this means for everybody moving forward. What do you think from Miami's standpoint, Caroline? They move on from Tua. We know that. They bring in Malik Willis. We see that. What do you think of the move?
I'm confused. I don't disagree with the decision to move on from Tua. Sure, Miami's going into cap hell because of it, but they knew that Tua was not their answer. So they moved on from Tua. I don't disagree with that in the slightest. But what that told me was Miami acknowledges that Tua is not a starting quarterback in the NFL. I don't know if Malik Willis is a starting quarterback in the NFL. Sure, everyone's really excited about Malik Willis, and we saw a whole lot of promise. We saw a lot of good from Malik Willis when he came in relief for Jordan Love last year in Green Bay. But in a backup capacity, he's been a backup the entirety of his career. Doesn't mean that he can't ascend to be a starter. There are definitely a lot of traits to be really excited about. But I don't know if he's a starting quarterback in the NFL. So what Miami is doing is moving on from a guy and paying an unprecedented amount of dead cap money for a guy that they know is not a starting quarterback in the NFL, only to sign a guy that we don't know if he is. It doesn't make sense to me. And it made sense to me when the Dolphins moved on from Tua. They told me, hey, we're sucking. We are tearing this thing down to the studs. We are selling. We are getting all the assets that we can get back. We are going into absolute cap misery. We're going to be poor for the next couple of years. We're going to suck, and we're going to hope and find our quarterback of the future in the draft next year. But then we're also going to sign a $23 million quarterback for the next 3 years. What? It doesn't make sense to me. And Fitz, I'm hearing the argument a lot of, hey, if Malik Willis shows a lot of promise, then heck yeah, you got a starting quarterback for $23 million and you have your quarterback of the future. I understand that thought process. The other thought process is, well, if Malik Willis is terrible, well, then you have your answer. Then you're probably going to be bad enough to draft a quarterback at the top of the draft. I hear you. I see that thought process. I also think there's a lot cheaper ways to suck, but okay, whatever. We can just roll the dice here and hope you find something that sticks. But I think there's a much higher likelihood that Malik Willis wins you enough games to keep you out of contention for a quarterback for next season, but not enough to be relevant or overly exciting or be a postseason team. So you know what you are? Stuck in the mucky middle. It doesn't add up to me. I don't see the clear vision of what Miami wants to do here. Do you want to be bad, or do you want to try to win?
Yeah, I don't get this at all. Also, because if you're Malik, I understand you go into an organization to be a starting quarterback, and maybe the market wasn't as robust on Malik as some of us thought it would be. I don't know, but you're going to a team that this time yesterday we were asking questions about whether or not it's a total fire sale. Like, are they going to trade Devon Achane? Are they going to get rid of Jalen Waddle? Like, what's the actual team construction look like? I still don't know that we really have answers to that. So if you're Miami, you're bringing in a quarterback that, as I've said repeatedly over and over and over again, has 155 career NFL passes. So let's not pretend he has a massive body of work. And you're not putting him in a Green Bay-like situation. I mean, for whatever we want to say about Malik Willis getting it figured out in Green Bay, he didn't have it figured out when he was with Tennessee, partially because they didn't have the pieces around him and they didn't have the coaching around him when he was with the Titans for him to show anything. Now, all of a sudden, he goes to a Miami team that I'm not sure has a lot of talent on that roster or the intent to keep that talent on the roster as they start what is a rebuild, which means they're going to be putting lesser weapons around Malik, who still needs to develop into whatever he's going to be as a starting quarterback. Like, I struggle to make all of these things align at once. I don't know what the Dolphins' plan is, simply because I felt like 24 hours ago the plan was to rip it down to the studs. If you're going to rip it down to the studs, you're not giving your young quarterback that needs development anything around him that will help him continue to develop. So even if you think you got a steal of a deal in this because you think he's going to outplay this contract quickly, will there be the necessary structure around Malik Willis for him to actually perform to a level that would let him outperform his contract? None of this seems to line up in my very logical head. So I don't love this move for a million different reasons, which brings us to the other side of this, right? Like, Tua is now headed to Atlanta, where Tua is going to be battling with Michael Penix Jr. here. What do you think of this move as we get a quarterback with health issues coming in to battle a quarterback with health? Hey, they're both left-handed. Like, they don't have to rework the offense for that. I don't know, but What do you think of Tua in Atlanta battling Michael Penix Jr.?
On one side, I get it. You're getting a cheap body insurance policy to fit into the offense while Michael Penix Jr. gets back to 100% health. On the other side, I look at the moves that the Falcons have made over the last couple of years. You sign Kirk Cousins and give him all of that money, and then you draft Michael Penix Jr. with a top 10 pick, and then you cut Kirk Cousins, and then you sign Tua Tagovailoa, who Miami just said we would way rather pay $100 million than never see him again. Like, what a wild little turn of events in Atlanta. What this is to me is, sure, you could say it's a cheap insurance policy. You're signing him off of the street. You're paying to a veteran minimum because he's getting all of that money from Miami. But I am of the belief, when you have a bad situation, bringing in someone else who can't help the bad situation doesn't do anything for you. You have a big question mark with Michael Penix Jr. Tua Tagovailoa is a massive question mark. So adding a question with another question, now you just have two injury-prone quarterbacks that haven't proven themselves to be starters in the NFL.
The funny thing is that everybody makes these huge blanket statements about what to do with the quarterback, like when to pay the quarterback, when to draft the quarterback. This league is super simple. If we just dumb it down to the very core, you either have your quarterback or you don't. It's that simple. And every year you're asking yourself, do we have our quarterback or do we not have our quarterback? And every year that the answer is yes, you're good, and you build your roster around it. Every year the answer is no, then you're going to be fighting to try and figure out a way to bring in that quarterback. Like this Atlanta situation is a combination of both approaches. You've got one quarterback in Michael Penix Jr. that is being given up on probably early in this process. Like, if Penix Jr. can't beat out Tua, woof, right? But if Tua can't beat out Penix Jr., woof, right? Like, so this just feels like this is the worst of both case scenarios. Like we say all the time, don't pay your quarterback unless you've got it. Don't pay incredible money to an average quarterback. Well, Miami just did that, and now they're out of that contract almost immediately. Yeah, they'll have hit a dead cap, but that's the way you get bad enough to go get another quarterback to try and replace it. So, like, what I see here is colliding logics on quarterbacks that remind us the entire way you either have a guy or you don't. It's that simple. Like, it's not about whether or not you paid him. It's not about where you drafted him. It's not about drafting somebody high or drafting somebody in mid rounds. It's not about, paying somebody early or paying somebody late. Like, it's as simple as looking at it this year and saying, in the construct of the way the NFL is built, do I have a quarterback that can beat the Joshes, beat the Mahomes, beat the Joe Burrows? If the answer to that is no, then you just keep trying no matter what you can to move that around. You move the pieces around until you find somebody that can compete. And it feels like more and more, Caroline, whether it's I drafted high, I don't care, I want to get out of them, you do that. I paid somebody, I don't care, I want to get out of them, you do that. Like, quarterbacking is more temporary than ever in the modern NFL.
I always love when I'll hear general managers or decision makers that exist in the NFL. They always say, you, as in the media, the fans, we have a lovely privilege of getting to second guess. It's really easy for us to get up here and say, in a draft class with Joe Burrow, Justin Herbert, and Tua Tagovailoa, Miami made the wrong decision. It's really easy for us to say that after the fact. When you are a GM, when you are a decision maker, you don't have that privilege. You have to first guess everything. So you have to make your mind up. Do we have our quarterback? Yes. Then you pay that guy whatever it takes to keep him in the building. Do we have our quarterback? No. The secondary question is, then what's our path to the next one? And are we willing to go into the mystery land of not having a quarterback, or would we prefer to stick with the quarterback that we do know? Miami just told us we would way rather roll the dice and go into quarterback purgatory than continue to pay money and invest in a quarterback that we do not believe in. Now, that is a question mark in the market, but the question mark in the market was more attractive than what Tua Tagovailoa can offer. For the Falcons, it was way more worth it for them to say, hey, we're paying him nothing. We don't have to give up anything to get him, and we still feel like there's something that we can work with there. I don't agree with that, but that's what the position that the Falcons find themselves in.
You're right. At the end of the day, you got to look in the mirror and ask yourself, do I have a quarterback that can compete? And if the answer is no, then you have to ask yourself, what's the best path to getting one? And those two answers together make quarterback action fairly clear. It's fairly clear why the Dolphins moved on. It's fairly clear why the Falcons are bringing all of this is fairly clear if you take all, heart out of it and just look at it from the context of, do I have a quarterback? And if not, what's my path to getting one? We'll keep breaking it down because we have winners and losers to get to. But coming up next, we have NCAA March Madness to preview. Dalen Cuff going to join us and figure out if that team right there is actually the best in all the land.
What is the process as a receiver? Winning against zone coverage, is it more settling down? Is it finding holes? Walk us through the process there.
So the first thing that you want to look at is those safeties, right? So then you just look at your triangle. So I go safeties to nickel backer or nickel or backer, and then out to that corner, is it going to be cover two? Are they showing three right now because they're going to roll into two? Are those safeties low? Just seeing those subtleties are really what makes you a really good zone player.
You don't want to get ahead of yourself when you think that he's going to come and be a game changer. He's more of a managerial type that can operate at a high level. I've made the comparison to Jared Goff in terms of how he'll play the game within the right system. The best thing that has happened to Fernando Mendoza is Clint Kubiak bringing his system to the Las Vegas Raiders. And when surrounded by the right talent, he can have a lot of success.
We got the announcement that Floyd Mayweather will be taking on Manny Pacquiao in a rematch. People will watch, people will tune in, and I'm curious to see how it looks. I think they're going to be around the same skill level if they both come in healthy. And I really think it is significant that Floyd Mayweather is putting the L on the line.
100%. How do you make the competitive balance the most even? I think Manny and Floyd at this stages in their life, that makes it fair and exciting. So I'm in on Mayweather Pacquiao too.
A little Saban for us because everybody loves Saban. So, give us your thoughts.
I knew that you were going to bring me in here and have me do Nick Saban for him.
Have you done Saban for Saban?
No, but I've met him.
Okay.
and he didn't know that it was me. And he shook my hand, and I said, "Coach, Joey Molinaro, so good to finally meet you," as if he would know who I was. And he just looked at me and goes, "Yeah, well, all right," walked away.
I think Florida is the best team in the country when they're playing their best. That from Dalen Cuff buying stock in the Gators, going back-to-back. Speaking of Dalen, he joins us right now. We will bring in friend of the program, Dalen Cuff, who, by the way, I'll be hanging out with Sunday night for some March Madness fun. So we have lots of March Madness coming on the Yahoo Sports Network. Explain yourself, good sir. What do you love about Florida?
I love our industry sometimes. You wish you had a cleaner quote when they're playing their best, just to define that. SVP says it all the time, and I'm stealing his line, but I'm sure I don't know where he got it either. But how good is your good? I think their good is better than anybody else's good. And they've put that on tape more consistently over the last 6 weeks than anybody else. Guys, 2 months ago, they were 22, 23-1 to win the national championship. 2.5 weeks ago, they were still 13, 14-1. Right now, they're 5, 6-1 to win a national championship. It is crazy how much now the country and the market is caught up to where this team is. That guy, Boogie Fland, has greatly improved his efficiency and effectiveness. Xavier Lee has as well. Their bigs, though, are the key to this team. They're the best front line in the country. Ruben Chinilo is the best defensive player in the SEC, maybe the best defensive player, and definitely the best rebounder in the country. All four of their bigs are part of this team last year, won a national championship. So you're bringing back experience. You obviously have Todd Golden coaching on the sidelines, won a national championship. Their guards have improved, as I mentioned. You're getting great benefits from the bench. The team you saw in November, December, lost to Arizona, lost to UConn, lost to TCU, had some disappointing starts of the season, is way different than the group they are now. I think their good is better than anybody else in the country, and I'm excited to see them put that on display here in the SEC tournament, and then as we get to the big dance here next week.
Florida, no doubt, national championship contender, but so is Duke. They clinched a 17-1 ACC regular season after taking UNC down on Saturday. The ACC tournament gets started today. Who can stop Duke in the ACC tournament?
Well, injuries can stop Duke, Caroline. That's the problem right now. That's the issue with this team. We just saw it this past weekend. You had no Patrick Gumba, their big center, and I've been saying for weeks now, he's their most important player. Cameron Boozer is the most valuable player in the country, the best player in the country, but Gumba makes them different. And when he's not in the lineup, you lose your rim protection, you lose your lob threat, you lose your best rebounder. And he was bummed to not play in that Duke game. That was a big enough hit. But then Caleb Foster mid-game, you lose your starting point guard. So they're figuring it out on the fly there in that game, and they were dominant over North Carolina. They're just flat out more talented. They're better. They're at home. But we're talking about winning a national championship, which unfortunately or fortunately for Duke, that is the only measure by which you are assessed. It is not about ACC championships. It's not about ACC tournaments. It's about the NCAA tournament winning national championships. And this team, I'm concerned for their health. They've proven they've played over the balance of the season, the best in the entire country. They've been the most consistent. Them along with Arizona, I would say. But with these injuries, that's the question. So we'll see what happens and who plays when you come on Thursday here in the ACC tournament. And if Gumba can go and if Foster can go, we've yet to hear anything of substance, and we won't. There's no reason for Duke or John Shire to say anything, because if you do say a guy is out, that can affect your seeding. Now, they're not going to go off the one line, but maybe they go from the overall 1 to the overall 3. You just don't give the committee that option. Now, what the real question is when we tip it up next week in the NCAA tournament, who can play? Because you could sit out a 16-1 game, and that's fine. An 8-9 game they're going to play in the next round. Those are other high major quality opponents. They're not sitting guys for that. So I just hope they're healthy. I hope we get to see this team at full capacity, because when they are, to your initial question, nobody's stopping them in their own league. The question is, can they win a national title? To be healthy is the answer.
Okay, so you mentioned Cam, and on this show, like many shows, we've talked a lot about Cam, AJ, and Darren Peterson whenever he actually plays. With those three phenoms, can any one of those players in your mind single-handedly take their team on a deep run? Like, are we going to get a superstar run from a superstar that launches a team deep into this run?
We'll go process elimination. Unfortunately, AJ and crew are out. Losing Richie Saunders, who's a fellow top 20, top 25 pick, that was critical. They had a three-headed monster. It was Richie Saunders, AJ DeBonsa, and Robert Wright. Now, those guys were averaging together almost 60 points a game. And they had been, I think, 16-1 at one point in time. They had problems with not playing full 40 minutes. They had some defensive issues, but they still had these three just supremely talented players, good role players. You lose the key guy, you lose one of your key guys. They have not bounced back defensively. They've been poor. They did beat Texas Tech this weekend in a good win at home at the Marriott Center, but when you say deep run, we're talking Final Four, Elite Eight. I don't think they have the consistency to get there. If they make it to the second weekend, I think that'd be a win given what they've looked like in the last 4 weeks. Darren Peterson in Kansas is the biggest enigma in the country. They have a defensive team and a coach and a star in him that could get you to a Final Four without a doubt. I think they've proven they beat Arizona at home without him on the floor. They have a lot of good wins without him on the floor. They're still trying to figure out exactly how to play their best with them together. I think they've figured out the off-the-court crap. I think they're over it, and the country caught up to it late, Fitzy, honestly. Like, this has been going on since December, January. Then we had the Super Bowl, and the next Monday there was Arizona, Kansas, and he didn't play. And then everybody else said, football's over. So basketball took a little bit of a center stage, and everybody had a comment on him not playing. So it was a timing thing. The team had already been dealing with it. The question is, can they find their apex together with him on the floor? He is probably the most gifted natural scorer in the country. I still think he will easily be the first or second pick in the draft. There's not a question in my mind. The question is, when he's logging 30 minutes a game, as he mostly has the last 4 or 5 games, will he be able to be efficient and effective as you want and need him to be? That remains to be seen. And his team has to defend. They are built on the defensive end. They were an elite defensive team when they're playing at their best. They've struggled with that in recent weeks. When they are elite defensively, they can get you to a Final Four, which leaves Cam. And Cam, it's not single-handed, but he is by far their Batman. The question is, who will be the Robin stepping up with him? That's been the question all year. Isaiah Evans has to make some shots for them. Dame Sarr is an elite defensive player that is now making shots and playing really confidently. I already mentioned Patrick Gumba. If they're fully healthy, without a doubt, Cam at the head of the snake has the chance to lead them to a national championship. That's not just him, though. His team is critical to that, as are the other guys, too. Their teams aren't as good. They have bigger question marks. Cam has less question marks, and he is by far the most dominant single player in the country. That's why the National Player of the Year race was wrapped up literally, a month ago. And he just keeps putting up bigger games and bigger numbers.
Yeah, he is insane. But as we know, last year, all 4 1 seeds were represented in the Final Four. That's only happened twice in the history of the tournament. So the law of probability would say that's not going to happen for the second year in a row. So of all of these teams that are in contention of getting a 1 seed, Duke, Arizona, Michigan, Florida, any other team that you want to throw into the mix, who do you think is most vulnerable of dropping out of the tournament before we reach the Final Four?
So a couple things there. I think, first of all, the 4 teams that have separated are Duke, Arizona, Michigan, and Florida. I think that separation, and we've seen that in the last couple of weeks, and that's been codified in my mind. Those teams are the 4 best. That said, until UConn put a brick up at Marquette, their resume over the season was better. I thought they were going to end up being the number one, the last 1 seed, and Florida was going to be that first 2 seed. And to your point, law of averages gave me a reason to put in 3 1s in a 2 in my Final Four. That now has gone away. I think these 4 teams are going to be the 1 seeds. And you're right. The statistics say it's not going to happen, but I'll be hard-pressed in these matchups to see myself not doing it again. I hate being chalky and saying it already, and maybe we won't. But we'll take a look at how it all settles. I will say, I'm going to say Michigan probably has the chance because I think they've shown the greatest variance in their performance. I mentioned Florida being a way different team, but Michigan has shown huge peaks early in the season, but they'd also shown valleys, and they've been kind of up and down. And you can see they lost that game to Duke. Next game against Minnesota, they're at home. You think they're going to throttle Minnesota the first 30 minutes. They're kind of playing with their food. They can have some turnover issues. They do have an injury issue. LJ Kaysen is done for the season. Talented backup point guard that really would come in for Elliot Cadeau at times and help change their team. Plays with great pace and efficiency and was really effective the last month before his injury. So how that kind of assess how that tinkers Dusty May's rotation. We've seen 3 or 4 games of it. It's looked good. Obviously, they've won the games. But there's still some questions. So if I'm picking one team to get knocked off in this run, I guess it's going to be Michigan, which is probably antithetical to what most people think. I just think Arizona's been so consistent for so long from the first night of the season, and they've continued to improve. I think that they're going to find their way into the Final Four. Duke with the injuries, I already went over that. If they're hurt, then can I have a mulligan? Okay, if Patrick Gumba can't play, I'm going to redo this take because it's definitely Duke if they're not fully healthy. But all things fully healthy, I will lean toward Michigan just because at times I think they've shown some variance and some turnover issues. And obviously, I'm already glowed about Florida, so I'm not going to say that.
The Big Ten has been stacked this year. Is there somebody else in that conference you think could make a massive run?
Massive. I mean, I think Michigan State, when their challenge is still in a half-court offensive game, Fitz, if they can execute enough. Jeremy Fears is outstanding, but they can get a little stagnant. They don't have great outside shooting. They're going to have to be more physical than you. They're going to have to be tougher than you. They're going to have to get in transition to score. I think their Elite Eight is probably their apex, but that's still obviously a great run. I'm very interested in where Wisconsin's going to be seated. I was interested in that before we got to the Purdue win this past weekend. Bear in mind, they did go into Michigan and beat Michigan, and they put up 15 threes. They have two dynamic guards in John Blackwell and Nick Boyd, which guards do win. It's trite but true. Guards win games when it comes to the NCAA tournament. So I think Wisconsin's going to be where they're seated. If they're a 4-5, if they get in that 3 line, that'd be impressive. But they're a team to watch out for getting to an Elite Eight. You know, depending upon a matchup, it's shockingly a Final Four. I think their defense is a little too questionable for that. But the team actually the other way though. I mean, Illinois too. Illinois is a elite offensive team. Are they good enough defensively? I don't think they can win a title. I do think they can get you to a Final Four because they are so good. And I think Kylan Boswell being fully healthy is critical. But and Keaton Wagler has been one of the best freshmen in the country. That I think is, if they have a deep run, guys, you will be talking about Keaton Wagler a lot because he will be a high draft pick in the NBA draft. So I think he might have a breakout tournament to the country, but he put up 46 in Mackey against Purdue earlier this year. He's been outstanding, but it's a little more niche, I would say, that people have followed him that are casual sports fans. To go the other way, though, Purdue, guys, Purdue's a hot mess. Okay, they do not guard. They've been 6-6 over the last 12. They're limited athletically. We've already known that. Braden Smith, who's one of the best point guards in the country, yes, but he is late game. He's not been great, especially in the last 2 months of critical moments of games. And defensively, when you have dynamic guards that they have to guard, it's a problem. It's a huge issue for them. So, I mean, Purdue's matchups will be very interesting. That second round, I'll be intrigued to see where they're seated. If they drop to a 4 line, or we get into a 5 line. But I would like to see where they're going to be seated. But I do think there's going to be some questions for me around if they can get to that second weekend, given how they've played recently and given their opponent. I think again that matchup will be important. If there's a dynamic guard or two in that other team, I might be taking an upset early.
I never want to wish our basketball away because I know we're going to have some epic conference tournament action. But
what are you about to say? We just started March. What are you about to say? You want it to be baseball season? What are you doing to me?
I wanted to hurry up and be March Madness. Okay, sorry, conference tournaments. Love you. You're great. You have a great personality. But we are in March, and I'm ready for some tournament action. So we were talking about conference contenders, national championship contenders. What about Cinderellas? Who are some potential giant slayers that you have your eye on?
It's funny that you say it's like you just gave her like bless her heart, like she's got a good heart, like champ week. You got a good heart.
So
we're out on you.
Sweet. She's so funny.
So sweet. She's so nice. She's really funny. She's really funny, dude. I think what we're missing with Champ Week though is this where the Cinderellas get crowned. They get their chance here, and that's what's. It's great, but it's disheartening too because some of the best teams, your 1 seeds, are out. UNCW and the CAA, Navy and the Patriot League, and a brutal buzzer beater at home. Like some of the teams that maybe could have made some noise, it's a problem. I'm interested to see where High Point gets seated. Let me back up. Where these teams are seated really matter, and that all the bubble talk and your seeding talk, where the 10s, 11s, 12s, is really not in a vacuum. Like that affects who gets in and who steals what bids, and if a league gets multiple bids when they shouldn't. That affects this whole thing. So, I mean, I think High Point, who's already punched their ticket, is a team that could be compelling. They went to the tournament last year, basically a whole different team now, though. But they're very good defensively. They do not turn the ball over. They're efficient offensively. They're tough. They're well coached and they're well coached. And I do think this will be a situation where their seed impacts them. 12 seed helps them. A 13 seed will hurt them a little bit. We'll see where they end up falling. But High Point's a team to watch out for. Everybody's talking about Miami of Ohio, actually, where they're seated is one of the stories of the tournament because they have now 2 quad 2 wins, no quad 1 wins, which are your best wins. They didn't play a quad 1 game. They didn't play any high major opponent. It's impressive nonetheless what they have done, going undefeated, but we have no measuring stick against the teams that they would see in the first round of the tournament. It'll be the first time they will have seen, and I'm saying this as a former mid-major player, the biggest difference between a mid-major player and high major player is physically the tools you have. The guy across from me was usually 2 to 4 inches taller than me, ran faster, jumped higher. Didn't make him a better player, didn't make him more effective, but physically there are tools and things he can do that I couldn't do. And that's, sometimes there's an adjustment to playing in that kind of game. And I wonder how they're going to adjust to playing in that kind of game. They're very well coached by Travis Steele, but where they're seated will be a massive question mark. If they get to that 8-9 line, that's great for them. If they're in the 9-10, the 10-11 spot, it's very different in terms of the opponent you would play in that first round. In terms of other Cinderella's teams I like Belmont. didn't make it. So this is where part of this thing with Champ Week is so compelling to me, is all those mid-majors it's being resolved. Who will go? And that question is more easy to answer when we actually have a bracket, A, because we know who's in it, and B, because we look at the particular matchups, especially when it comes to upsets, are critical. But the story, like I said, High Point I'm interested in. I'm interested in where Miami's going to go. And I do think you need to watch like different leagues, like the Atlantic 10 this week. St. Louis is going to the tournament, and they're a team that I thought could make a deep run. They've struggled recently. They have a big maybe injury question with Robbie Avila, who might be player of the year in the league. So St. Louis, I have some question marks around that I didn't have before. VCU is a bubble team if they get in, and if somebody else wins that league, that may steal a bid. So you may have 3 bids out of the A10 out of nowhere, which again affects the rest of the bubble. So all this stuff is why Champ Week is glorious, Miss Madden, because we just don't know how it's going to shake out. So we don't wish it away.
I know,
we just
it's
suck it all.
great.
Just
I
bring
know.
Bring in all the March. Give me all the March.
My favorite part of this time of year is that a bunch of people that haven't watched 2 seconds of Miami of Ohio suddenly have the biggest opinions ever about Miami of Ohio. It's the glory of college basketball. That's why we need Dalen, because Dalen's actually consumed all of this. It is why we need you, my friend. We'll be hanging out on Sunday. For everybody that doesn't know, you can watch a ton of great bracket content here with Yahoo Sports on Sunday and Monday. Caroline and I will both be big involved in all that, so make sure you check it out. Follow Dalen on Twitter, X, at Dalen Cuff. Dalen, appreciate you. See you Sunday night, my friend. Thanks for all the great expertise.
Can't wait to do it. See you guys.
Just one. We're going to get one portion of one of Dalen's quotes and just put it out. And that way, just to frustrate him. Thanks, Dalen. All right, coming up next, Dalen was the MVP of that segment. SGA's the MVP of the NBA, and it ain't even close. He reminded us again last night.
Criticism like that from a coach. In the moment, how are you feeling when that's happening and the film's on screen?
Yeah, man, I think it's you listen more to the message and not the tone of the message. I mean, I think it's actually better to get called out than to not, because it shows not only like you're not worried about getting your feelings hurt. Like they're not worried about hurting my feelings. And that's something I love about our coach. Like he's not really worried about hurting your feelings. He's going to tell you, shoot it to you straight. And for me, like I've always thrived under coaches that do that.
We are ranking the biggest robberies in MLS histories, the players who looked at their team owners and said, thanks for the cash, and gave absolutely nothing in return. If your team is on this list, we are very, very sorry. Danielson, FC Dallas. His contract was for $879,000.
If you're watching this, look at his photo. He don't even look interested to be there in the photo.
With 10 appearances, he effectively got nearly $100,000 per game.
I'm sitting there watching Unreal, and they're talking about you in WWE at the Royal Rumble, just being thrown into the ring. You ever getting back in the ring for one of those opportunities again after that injury?
Man, I don't know. I mean, we got WrestleMania coming up, so you maybe see me in there, you maybe not. I'm just not trying to get beat up, but we'll see. We'll see. Like I got beat up too much times. My body can't take that anymore.
Little teaser from the one and only Nate Diaz, unfinished business. And then he expanded on that on Twitter and said, I'll see you soon. I'm coming.
What about Dustin? Dustin versus Nate. Big fight. That could be a co-main or a main for a big fight card.
One that we always wanted to see.
One that Dustin has said, that'll get me out of retirement. The UFC could use him more than ever. They need stars now.
SGA calls game. Look at this. Boop. He's got it. Steps back. Up. Lofts it. And then, woo! Kisses nothing but the bottom of the net. And a reminder in an epic game with an instant classic finish that the MVP is right there in front of us. SGA leads OKC to the win over Denver, 129-126. I love this. I love everything about this shot. We'll get into the MVP discussion in a second, Caroline. But I see this. For every single person that tells me that regular season games don't matter and players don't care, there are nights that it just hits different. This was one of them. When you see this electric reaction, I literally have goosebumps as we talk about it. Just the way the crowd popped, the way that SGA popped, the fire of these two teams. I just watched this and thought, my God, give this to me in a 7-game series. I loved what we saw last night.
Well, let's not get it twisted. Excuse me. There are definitely some regular season games that don't matter, and definitely some regular season games that players don't care about. Like that does exist. And then we get games like last night two juggernauts in this deep and competitive West. A kind of regular season game that I feel like we'll be talking about for a really long time. The type of regular season game that might pop up on trivia over the next several years. The type of regular season game that makes you forget that there are regular season games that don't matter and regular season games that players don't care about. The type of regular season game that will be etched in our memory for so long because we saw a superstar do superstar things. In an incredibly back and forth and contentious game. And we got flagrants when we got players hitting other players in the face and in the no-no places. You had a big time moment and a tie game in the last few seconds when the SGA, the league MVP, let's not get that twisted, pulls up for three and wins a game. And the crowd goes wild. What looked like a sellout crowd went absolutely bonkers. When we saw a superstar carry his team and elevate his team throughout the consistency of the entire game. And I could be talking about SGA. I could be talking Nikola Jokic. It just so happened that a superstar made the final play of the game and was able to win it. Like that was a special kind of game that we saw last night.
Look, even at the end of the first half, when they were moving the ball around and got a buzzer beater at the end of the first half, and you saw this electric pop from the crowd and a pop from OKC, you could just tell that we were in this different sort of universe last night with these games. And we've spent a lot of time talking about the bad of the NBA. We're about to transition into that period where we talk about the good of the NBA. And you and I have talked a lot about some of the issues OKC's had with health this year, right? But none of that. For the purpose of this game last night, this was about SGA. I mean, so much about over and over and over again as he ties Wilt for the most consecutive 20-point games record. And, you know, you think about that for a guard to come out and do this. Most consecutive 20-point games in NBA history at 126. There is just something automatic. And maybe to some people, it's not, it's not as flashy. Like, if you grew up in a Jordan era like I did, certainly what SGA does is different than that. If you grew up in a Steph generation, what SGA does is different than that. Like the mid-range jumper is an art that sort of died. But what you see in SGA is somebody that I can't say the word, makes easy things look even easier. There we go. And what we end up with are these mid-range jumpers. Thank you so much. What we end up with are these mid-range jumpers that are sort of boring, but he makes them look easy over and over and over again. So to me, I watched somebody last night that with the weight of the game on his shoulders, every time they needed a bucket, every time they needed facilitation, every time they needed something, it went through SGA's hands, and he made the right decision, and his team won because of it. We oversimplify or overcomplicate so much of the NBA. I think it's really simple. SGA is the best player in the world right now, even if we don't love sometimes watching SGA play because it doesn't look like nothing we've ever seen, and it isn't this phenom. There's still something beautiful in my mind to the way that he plays the game.
And 1000%. I mean, I know that this is old news, and I know this is things that everyone knows, but it's something that still continues to be so fascinating to me. And I think an important part of SGA's story is we have seen greatness from players that we expected greatness from, right? And that is a different level of delivering on expectations, right? Kobe Bryant, LeBron James, guys who we knew they were when they were in high school, and they still ended up being one of the great ones. I think that's impressive. SGA, though, wasn't even a top 10 pick. SGA, when he was traded from the Clippers to OKC, it wasn't even really a conversation in the stipulations of the trade. Nobody viewed that as oh my gosh, maybe the Clippers just traded away the future best player on the planet. It's just kind of just like a player, a name, a guy. The fact that we didn't consider SGA coming to fruition as such makes his story, I think, that much more fascinating and almost that much more impressive. That he could come from being just a guy to the guy. From just a name, not a household name, to a guy that we can't talk about the game without talking about SGA. who I believe will be an MVP this season, who very much so has his team on track to potentially winning back-to-back championships, to winning back-to-back MVPs, that SGA is a certified superstar, best player on the planet, I think, right now. And just a couple of years ago, we weren't really talking about SGA as being much of a factor at all. That is fascinating to me, Fitz.
And it's also fascinating in some deep dive world where, like, we can end up with back-to-back champions, back-to-back MVP of SGA, and there will still be people out there that roll their eyes to it. Just like we watched Jokic win how many MVPs, and everybody's like, oh, like,
Yeah.
It is funny how unimpressed, how just too cool for school, casually unimpressed everybody seems to be with current MVPs. I refuse to be that way. OKC put up 129 points, by the way, and they did that last night without Chet, without J-Dub. I mean, they were missing pieces all over the place. So is this a statement more about, I don't know, Denver's defense or lack thereof, that they're still able to throttle them with that many points? Or is it more a statement about, to you, OKC's just staggering, unbelievable depth?
Permission to have a cop out here and say it's a little bit about both. Because I think it's about the depth. Like, you don't have Jalen Williams without the Y. Jalen Williams with the Y comes in, who's been a guy who's been incredibly reliable whenever OKC's been going through some of their injury bug. And Jalen Williams comes in and drops 29 points. That's depth. When OKC has, let me do quick math here, 42 points off the bench, that is a testament to depth. And that's not something that just came to fruition last night, although it came to fruition in a big way last night. That is something that has come to fruition so many times throughout the last month and some change whenever OKC's been dealing with injury. But it also has something to do with Denver's defense as well. When we talk about some of these championship contenders, Boston, OKC, San Antonio, all teams that rank in the top 5 defensively, when Denver sits at 22. And that's a liability for Denver. And one reason why I am hesitant to trust Denver to the level that I trust an OKC, a San Antonio, and a Boston when we talk about championship contenders. Sure, I mean, Jokic is good for 30 points on any given night, but as we've seen with, let's just say, the Lakers, sometimes offense isn't enough to overcome a bad defense. So it is a factor of both, I think, Fitzy. It's Denver's defense being a liability, but it's also a testament to OKC that they can have anyone come off the bench. They can have anyone fill in with some injury problems, and they still don't seem to miss a beat. It is wildly impressive.
And the fact is, they've had to win a lot of games this year without their core, and that has given a young group of bench players a lot of experience, a lot of confidence, a lot of get-togetherness, all of these things. Like, look, just to be as clear as possible, if Oklahoma City is healthy and your plan as a fan of any other team is to win an NBA championship, the only thing you should be buying right now is every voodoo doll known to man. Because, like, you are not – if OKC gets healthy, even if they're not healthy, I'm not sure you can beat them. If OKC is healthy, you're not going to beat them this year. You're not going to beat them next year. Like, health is the only thing that could take down Oklahoma City. And even this year, when they haven't been healthy and they have every right to not give a damn, they are still where they are. Every time I want to find a cute reason to make it more interesting and find another team that should take down Oklahoma City, I'm reminded that the Thunder are better than your favorite team. They are better built. They are better developed. They have better depth. They have better superstars. They have who's going to, in my mind, inevitably be the 2-time MVP at this point. They are the best team in the NBA. When they're healthy, it's not even close. When they're beat up, it's sort of close. That's how big the margins have gotten for OKC. And just a reminder, they have a ton of draft capital. They aren't in a salary cap situation. Like, everything you could possibly want for OKC.
They're not going anywhere.
Is built right. Just get used to it. The Thunder are better than your favorite team. It's a great time to go buy a Thunder jersey. Plenty more to break down in the NBA, but we got to get back to what was a wild 24 hours in the NFL. We'll give you some of what you need. Overrated, underrated. We'll look at some of the free agent signings we love and question, all coming up next.
Well, one of the things, too, that keeps coming up, I keep hearing, and it kept coming up in response to my story after the hearing and during the hearing, is, hey, why doesn't he just go pro? Imagine being a college kid and making $5 million plus.
It's pretty easy. It's just money, guys. It's guaranteed money. This is probably, for most of these individuals, the last time they can make this much money playing the sport.
How can I sit here in one breath and say the sport is broken when it looks like the audience is more pleased with the sport than ever?
It's not broke. It's just we've been drinking out of a fire hose for 3 years. But it can't just be pay them, kick them off the team, next guy, next team. I worry about these kids' long-term health and what they're going to do with their lives when they're 26 and 27, when they have no roots at any university.
James Rodriguez is reportedly joining Minnesota United. The main thing as a fan of the league, I would just be excited to see him play. And then Minnesota against NYCFC, get to go see James. And what if that game is at Citi Field, bro? Queens is going to lose their mind.
It's going to go nuts. Astoria and Jackson Heights will be empty. There will be 3 Uruguayans, 4 Argentinians, and 6 Mexicans in all of Jackson Heights going, what the hell's going on? Where is everybody?
Admittedly, I'm a huge fan of Travis Hunter as a prospect. Do you have any sense of what his growth is going to be like, where he might be playing more and more, what his role is going to look like, especially on the offensive side?
The way he is, his personality, I think this injury in his rookie year is only going to just make him better. He was starting to really get going on offense, and we were starting to click. So who knows what the rep count looks like, but I know he's a special receiver when he gets the ball in his hands.
Reminder, if your team didn't sign anyone within 5 hours of the start of free agency, your GM's asleep at the switch, your coach is neglecting his roster, your owner's cheap, and any shot you had at a championship is over and done with. Albert Breer nailing the sentiment of every single fan base yesterday as free agent frenzy began in the NFL. And look, all kidding, this is funny, Caroline. I took the time and I looked it up, and in the last 11 years, and this is an actual number I looked up, in the last 11 years, we all know last year, New England spent the most money of anybody in free agency, and they saw a drastic return on that. They make the playoffs, a 10-game improvement. That's what everybody's looking at. We're going to be the Patriots. I looked at the last 11 years. The only time that the highest-spending team in the last 11 years made the playoffs the following year was New England last year. In fact, over the last 11 years, the New York Jets have been the highest-spending team on day one of free agency 3 times. So not sure exactly how that worked out. Oh, yeah, we're sure how that worked out. So it's just a reminder that all of this money spent, God only knows, right? Like, we're doing our best to look at some of these, but the fact is, whatever we say today, it's so early in this process. We have moves we like and moves that we're questioning, but we'll go through them. But Caroline, I just think it's important to note for everybody that the Seahawks didn't make a move yesterday. Does that mean that suddenly we're out on the Seahawks? The Eagles didn't make a move of note yesterday. Does that mean we're out on the Eagles? Like, these are case by case, but I'm not going to make a sweeping generalization of teams that were or weren't aggressive yesterday.
And also important to point out with the Seahawks, for example, with certain compensatory picks that could be on the table, they don't get those if they sign more free agents than they've lost. Now, I understand compensatory picks don't necessarily, get you super jazzed. Compensatory picks aren't going to be what changes your franchise, but that is at least something, to keep in mind, that if the Seahawks went out and just had an absolute spending spree, those compensatory picks would not be on the table. Also important to point out, it's day 2 of free agency. Like, it has been open for 22 hours. I've heard this from so many fan bases that by 12:30 Eastern time, they were like, hello, is my GM awake? And it's like, calm down, everybody, take a chill pill. We have plenty of the NFL offseason to go. So everybody just take a deep breath.
So let's take a look at some of the transactions that we loved and some of the transactions that we found curious. And I'll go first with one that I think is underrated. And because, look, you'll hear a few gym stories over the course of this segment because I was at the gym listening to Free Agents Frenzy yesterday. I'm lifting. I'm getting all swole. And one signing that I heard that made me say, oh, wow. One signing that made me actually pump a little extra. Jalen Phillips to Carolina. I loved this move. I don't care about the money. I love 4 years, $120 million. Great. What you're talking about is one of the more league-respected defensive coordinators in the NFL at this point for Carolina Panthers team that far exceeded the expectations last year. But go back and watch some of that. I'm enough of a degenerate that I've started that process. They didn't overachieve last year because they had a lucky season or because this was a weird way to win 8 or 9 games. Carolina was just better than we thought. And then they come into an offseason now where they need some pieces to take a big step forward. I think Jalen Phillips, by the way, a huge get for them. I'm stunned that he walked away from the Eagles. I think the Eagles were probably a little shell-shocked that he walked away. 4 years, $120 million. This feels substantial to me for a Carolina team that is building something in a division that is winnable. I feel better today about Carolina than I did 24 hours ago. I did not expect them to be one of my winners. Jalen Phillips makes them that for me. What do you think?
I mean, 4 years, $120 million is a lot of money. A lot of money. I thought 4 years, $100 million would be a lot for Jalen Phillips. 4 years, $120 million. That is a fat payday. So first of all, good for Jalen Phillips, but also what he added to Philadelphia last season after the trade deadline. I mean, he blossomed. He absolutely was a huge factor for Philadelphia when they acquired him late in the season. Now, I love this for Carolina. I am with you. I think this bolsters up their pass rush. I also would like to remind Carolina and also Houston, offense does exist. That is a side of the ball. That you can also supplement that side of the ball as well. Cough, cough, Reed Blankenship going to Houston. A scary defense just got scarier, but also who's catching passes in Houston? I would love to see Carolina add more on the offensive side of the ball, especially considering that they lost Rico the Frico in free agency. But that doesn't take away the fact that I love this move, Jalen Phillips to Carolina. Now, I do have concerns about injury. Paying that much money to a guy and guaranteeing that much money to a guy who has had injury concerns, I think is a bit of a red flag to me. But let's also remember, you're going to overpay in free agency for guys that either are old or banged up or are not that good or have character concerns. So that's just the inevitability of free agency. But I love Carolina swinging and making a big move and saying, look, making the playoffs isn't good enough for us anymore. Winning the division isn't just good enough. Not only do we want to make the playoffs and win the division, we want to make some noise in the playoffs. So kudos to Carolina for capitalizing on that and spending what it's going to take to double down on what they were able to achieve last season.
All right, so give me somebody that you've got your eye on that was an underrated free agent for you.
Offensive linemen are people too. And I loved Cade Mays to Detroit. If we're going to talk about Carolina, Cade Mays was a big part, I think, of Bryce Young's renaissance this past season. We all wrote Bryce Young off. I mean, obviously, when you get benched for Andy Dalton, it doesn't look great for you. But I do think that offensive line, keeping Bryce Young upright, giving him that level of comfort, was a big part of why we saw Bryce Young get Carolina to the postseason last year. And look, Detroit's offensive line went from one of their strengths to kind of a liability in 2025. Frank Ragnow retires. You have a huge hole, an incredibly important position on the offensive line at center. And Cade Mays was the second best center behind Tyler Linderbaum available in free agency. So he got a nice little payday. The Lions didn't sell the farm in order to get him, but what they do get is a guy that's reliable, a guy that's largely been available, and a guy that I think is able to fill in that position and get Detroit right back to where they want to be, which is not just back to the playoffs, because missing the playoffs last year was a massive disappointment in Detroit, but getting Detroit back to being a Super Bowl contender. In 2024, the Detroit Lions had a top half of the league offensive line. Last season, they ranked in PFF pass block win rate 31st, a drop from 12th in 2024. So I think what Cade Mays offers them is just a reliable piece in an incredibly important position.
Now, look, we could talk all day long about where the Lions went wrong last year, but I think built in the trenches is part of their identity. And, certainly we knew that was going to be a problem last year. It turned out to be an even bigger problem than most of us thought. I agree with you. I think this is a great, great, great signing for Detroit, simply because it solidifies what they need to keep solid. I mean, the Jared Goff that you see right there, in front of you. Like, I don't think Jared Goff is a world beater of a quarterback. I also don't think Jared Goff is a bad quarterback. I think he's a very, very, very good quarterback when everything around him is what it needs to be. So keep everything around him what it needs to be, and you're going to have a very, very, like, I think Jared Goff in the right system can obviously win a Super Bowl, right? Like, we've seen that, but I think that, even Detroit can put the right team around Jared Goff to win a Super Bowl. So it's about putting the right team around Jared Goff year in and year out. I'll give you another underrated. Like, we're poly positive right now, and it's rare that a lot of good is said about the Cincinnati Bengals. Boye Mafe to the Bengals yesterday was a free agency signing I actually really love. Like, look, it wasn't cheap for them. We're talking about 3 years, $60 million to bring in somebody that goes from Seattle, where he just won a Super Bowl, to the Bengals, where ... not likely to win a Super Bowl. But we could talk all day long about what his count was last year and his sack numbers. People obsess about that stuff. But we'll go back to Pro Football Focus. 146 pressures over the last 3 seasons and 41 run stops. That ranks third in both categories for the entire NFL for edge rushers. So when we're talking about somebody at $20 million, that is a massive, massive deal in my mind to get him. Again, I know he doesn't have the electric Max Crosby, Myles Garrett sort of sack numbers that everybody gravitates to, but he was a key part of a Seattle defense that had a ton of guys that could get after it. He has proven himself to be capable of defending the run and the pass from the edge position. I think he gives a lot of flexibility to this Bengals defense. I know we're all obsessed with their lack of willingness to spend big money on Trey, and we make that into an indictment of the Bengals. The Bengals have repeatedly in the last few years not been afraid to open their wallets. They did that again here. $60 million is not a small amount of money for this player to come over, and I think it's a big addition for the Bengals. So they need a lot of help on the defensive side of the ball, but I loved this signing, Caroline.
I love this from you too, because I don't think Boye Mafe was talked enough about in this free agency class. But he fills a need, obviously, for Cincinnati. Trey Hendrickson and Joseph Asai both leaving in free agency. And also, you mentioned the amount of money. Sure, $20 million a year is not nothing. But when you look at what Jalen Phillips is getting in Carolina, $30 million a year. Odafe Owe, $25 million a year. It kind of feels like Boye Mafe is a little bit of a bargain. And you're getting a guy that's been incredibly reliable. And also, I was digging into my PFF bag the other day. He ranked in the 86th percentile in pass rush win rate at the edge. So, look, obviously Cincinnati needs a major overhaul defensively. Is Boye Mafe enough to do that single-handedly? No, of course not. He's going to have his work cut out for him. He's going to have to play a much larger role in Cincinnati than he did last year. But he fills a role, and compared to the market in free agency, does it at kind of a bargain.
Look at that bargain word being out there. Give me another underrated signing that you've got out there.
I said Cade Mays. I'm going back into my Tennessee Volunteers bag. Not a free agent that has been signed yet, at least not at this time, Tuesday, March 10th at 10:12 a.m. I think Jawan Jennings has been an underrated free agent. Is Jawan Jennings going to be your number one receiver? No, he is not, and you're not going to pay him as such. But what can Jawan Jennings do? Everything. Literally everything. He can stretch the field. He can play slot. He can block. I think he is one of the most underratedly willing blocking wide receivers in the National Football League. Now, maybe sometimes he overblocks a little bit. Okay, fine, fair, totally fine. But he can also play special teams. Jawan Jennings is like a jack of all trades. I think he's the perfect addition to a wide receiver room that feels like you already have some pretty clear-cut roles, for your receivers, but you can just plug Jawan Jennings in and play him like a chess piece. That's exactly how Kyle Shanahan was able to use him in San Francisco. He's clearly not going back to San Francisco. That's obvious with the Mike Evans signing. But I think that Jawan Jennings makes a whole lot of sense as one of those jack-of-all-trade kind of receivers. I think Jawan Jennings would make a lot of sense with the New England Patriots. I haven't seen him slated there. I've seen the Raiders as a potential fit. I've seen the Titans as a potential fit. But if there's one thing that I know about Mike Vrabel Fitz, it's that he loves blocking receivers. And Jawan Jennings does that, I think, better than any receiver on the market. So don't sleep on him.
And the Patriots have been fairly quiet, so I don't think that will stay the course. They've got to have their eyes on something. From the good to the bad, we should give you a couple that are maybe questionable. We'll say overrated, maybe a little curious. I'll be Debbie Downer first. I don't know that I'd necessarily understand ETN to New Orleans. Like, if I'm being honest here, I don't look at the Saints, who just were bad for a lot of the year, and then, of course, at the end of the year, got a little bit better. I don't look at the Saints and think, you know what they really need to take a leap forward? They need no more Alvin Kamara. Instead, they need Travis Etienne. Like, Etienne's a good player. He finally got unlocked this year with Liam Cohen. I don't think that his pro career necessarily had met the potential many of us thought he would have coming out of college, but last year it did, and that's really awesome. And he gets to go close to home, which I know matters to him. So, like, as a human being, I love this. But as a New Orleans Saints, if I'm a Saints fan today, am I looking around saying, you know what? The real problem we've had for the last several years was that Kamara is just not good enough. ETN will take care of that, and boom, we're going to win a bunch of football games. Like, this feels like a really good feeling move for everybody. Everybody can feel like the joy down in their heart. I just don't know that for me, Caroline, it makes a tangible difference to the product on the field. So for that reason, I find it to be overrated.
That's kind of where I struggle with some of these bad teams, and the Saints were one of them. Of like, look, no, they're not one running back away from being in contention, but also brick by brick, baby. You got to build it somehow. I'm fascinated, and I'm with you that, I want to see more from Travis Etienne based off of all of the draft type and what the expectations were of him coming into the league. I am fascinated, though, to see how Kellen Moore uses Travis Etienne. I don't think it's a coincidence that Saquon Barkley went from having an MVP caliber season in Philadelphia under Kellen Moore and then had massive regression last season. It's not just Travis Etienne as the player, but how he's used within the confines of this offense. That's what makes it intriguing to me. If we want to, throw a total poo-poo parade for some of these free agent signings, a lot of people have talked a lot about Michael Pittman and how much they love this fit with the Steelers. Doesn't do it for me. It doesn't really, it's fine. Yeah, it fills a need. The Steelers needed receivers. Do you know what the Steelers needed? Explosive playmakers. You know what Michael Pittman Jr. isn't? An explosive playmaker. He's not the most exciting receiver out there. The Steelers don't have the most exciting offense out there. And I know that you bring in Mike McCarthy, and ideally that the offense has a little bit more razzle-dazzle into it, but I don't think Michael Pittman Jr. necessarily fits that razzle-dazzle. I don't love it.
Look, our buddy Harmon breaks down wide receivers so well, and I know how much he loves the Colts wide receivers. To me, both of those transactions yesterday, whether it was Pittman getting traded to the Steelers or, in fairness, whether it was the massive amount of money the Colts gave Alec Pierce, both of them made me go, huh. Like, that's the best I could say to was,
like, okay.
Like, Pittman, sure. I mean, Pittman, I think Pittman's a very good wide receiver. I also think that if you're acquiring him for the Steelers, you're betting that he's going to be a massive step forward to immediately step in and be this transcendent number one. I don't know that I see him that way. He's just a good piece. So we'll see. The same with Pierce to me. Pierce is just a bit of a good piece. There are plenty more pieces to break down, and we will over the course of the show. But it's March 10th. It's deadline day. It is a day that was circled on the calendar by the WNBA as a day of consequence. So the question is, where are we on that consequence right now? We'll answer that for you next.
What is the process as a receiver winning against zone coverage? Is it more settling down? Is it finding holes? Walk us through the process.
Yeah,
there.
so like the first thing that you want to look at is those safeties, right? So then you just look at your triangle. So I go safeties to nickel backer or nickel or backer and then out to that corner, is it going to be cover two? Like, are they showing three right now because they're going to roll into two? Are those safeties low? Like, just seeing those subtleties are really what makes you a really good zone player.
You don't want to get ahead of yourself when you think that he's going to come and be a game changer. He's more of a managerial type that can operate at a high level. I've made the comparison to Jared Goff in terms of how he'll play the game within the right system. The best thing that has happened to Fernando Mendoza is Clint Kubiak bringing his system to the Las Vegas Raiders. And when surrounded by the right talent, he can have a lot of success.
We got the announcement that Floyd Mayweather will be taking on Manny Pacquiao in a rematch. People will watch, people will tune in, and I'm curious to see how it looks. Like, I think they're going to be around the same skill level if they both come in healthy. And I really think it is significant that Floyd Mayweather is putting the L on the line.
100%. How do you make the competitive balance the most even? I think Manny and Floyd at this stages in their life, that makes it fair and exciting. So I'm in on Mayweather Pacquiao too.
Little Saban for us, because everybody loves Saban. So, give us your thoughts.
I knew that you were going to bring me in here and have me do Nick Saban for him.
Have you done Saban for Saban?
No, but I've met him.
Okay.
And he didn't know that it was me. He shook my hand, and I said, Coach, Joey Molinaro, so good to finally meet you, as if he would know who I was. And he just looked at me and goes, yeah, well, all right. Walked away.
Caitlin Clark said, I don't understand why we don't just get in a room and iron it out and shake hands. That's what I would love to see. That is in response to her thoughts on what is a significant day today for the NBA, for the WNBA, for the Players Association, for the WNBPA, and everybody involved. As today is March 10th. And March 10th was the self-imposed deadline that WNBA presented to players on the day that a deal would have to be done in order for there to be no disruption to the season. So Caroline, obviously, we don't know. It's not like there's an actual line in the sand here that tomorrow suddenly looks everything could look wildly different. But the league had made this day very clear given the things that they have to accomplish. Expansion drafts, free agency. There's so much on the table. The league set today as a deadline day. And now we've heard multiple big names coming in and saying, hey, let's just get this worked out. What do you make of where we are in the stalemate today?
It does feel like there is now much more urgency, that we have seen a trading of proposals happen overnight over the span of a couple of days versus, as you're seeing there, the timeline, it was over the span of several weeks. So we saw 3 different counters within the span of a week. That's a good thing. And that's the point of a deadline. Deadlines breed urgency. And we are absolutely in an urgency period in CBA negotiations. Because let's not forget, we have an expansion draft that needs to be held for 2 teams. Like, Toronto and Portland still don't have players. And the season starts in 2 months. So, urgency. And we also have a college draft. The draft is happening in about a month. So you have expansion draft, college draft, training camp. We still have 2 teams that are making their debut this season. So there's a lot that needs to get done. Urgency needs to be felt. But I think my biggest concern that's arisen over the last couple of weeks is it has felt like the players and the players union have felt like they're on 2 different, they're in 2 different wavelengths. It's not where you want to be on March 10th. And we heard that in a statement from Brianna Stewart, that she said that we don't feel like the players are adequately represented in the Players Association's negotiations. And the Players Association came out and they issued a statement about their commitment to the players. So it feels like there is, early on in the negotiations going back to last fall, it felt like the players had never been more galvanized than they were in that moment. And now it feels like there is maybe some mixed messaging coming out from the players and the Players Association and all those that represent the players. It's as a group and as a whole. So it doesn't feel great. You don't want to be in this position at March 10th. It does at least feel, though, that there is much more urgency, and that's a positive thing. But urgency has to breed action.
Well, and the hard part is that urgency has different motivation for different people in different settings, right? If you are the owners, your urgency is business. It's trying to make sure that you have the chance to your point, field teams, which I don't think we can stress this enough. An expansion draft has to happen, right? Like, you've not only got existing players in the W that are trying to figure this out, you've got a ton of women that believe that they are going to get a shot in the W with more teams, expanded rosters, going to give you more opportunity, you would think, to play professional basketball. You have a lot of people whose lives are essentially on hold during this process. So for the owner's standpoint, you're worried about how do you market it, how do you sell it? I mean, I get calls and emails every day from Connecticut Sun people trying to get me to buy season tickets, and I laugh at that when I get these voicemails because I'm like, you want me to buy season tickets when we don't even know if there's going to be a season or if the Connecticut Sun are going to be forced to relocate. So, like, when you think about the business that is coming for the WNBA, of course that creates one sense of urgency from the owners. The other sense of the urgency comes from the players, Caroline, who are sitting here now and very real. There's a difference between sitting back and saying, okay, we might not make money next year, to all of a sudden stepping into it and saying, wait a minute, we've gotten to the point where I'm not going to get a paycheck. And certainly for some of the biggest stars in the league, that's no big deal. Between brand deals and podcasts and appearances and playing an Unrivaled, there's plenty of ways to make money for many of these women. But for many of them, there isn't, right? So now there's the urgency of, wait. I'm about to start missing game checks. I only have so many years to play, and I might lose my opportunity to play right now. So urgency is expected. Urgency is differently felt by each of the sides in this negotiation. And that's why when you get to these deadlines, somebody usually cracks, because not everybody feels the same pressures for the same things the same ways.
And this is my interpretation of where we are right now, is I do feel like the league really wants to just make this work. The players responded to one of the previous proposals and said, okay, well, we want housing. The league said, okay, done. Housing is included. The league immediately came back and said, you want this? We'll give you this. Because as we all know, negotiations are part of that. It's compromise. We'll give you something that you want, and you give us something that we want. It's a little bit of ebb and flow. It's a little bit of an I scratch your back, you scratch mine. It feels like the league is saying, okay, yes, we can give you these other things. Revenue share, and the revenue share that you are wanting is something that we just simply cannot do as a business. As a business that wants to thrive and wants to at least operate into the near future, we can't give you those things, but here's what we can give you. All of these other things, whether it's housing and working conditions and locker room conditions and so on and so forth, then flights, travel accommodations, we can give you those things. And that's why what I feel like is coming next from the players, or at least needs to come next for the players, is an acknowledgement of what we want doesn't make financial sense for the league right now. And while I want the players to get everything that they feel like they deserve, while I applaud the players for fighting this thing so hard, because if they don't represent themselves, if they don't fight for themselves, then who will? So I'm so proud of the WNBA and for the players for fighting for what they feel like they deserve. But sometimes what you feel like you deserve isn't necessarily feasible. And there is no WNBA if the league cannot operate financially. And the league is telling the players, look, what you want, we get it. We hear you. But what you want is not feasible. Like, we cannot operate as a league and as a business, as a money-making business, if we give you what you want, especially when there are question marks about, look, the league has reached unprecedented levels of financial growth the past couple of years. There's no guarantee that they're going to maintain at that level or grow at that level. So the WNBA as a league, as a business, as an entity also has to look out for itself.
I can only tell you that as somebody in my lifetime that has had to be a member of the Musicians Union and a member of SAG-AFTRA, the negotiations when it comes to everything that, like, negotiations with record labels about finances are dirty because nobody opens their books cleanly and everybody feels wrong throughout the entire process. The problem here will always be that at the end of the day, the WNBA ownership will tell you one thing, but the players don't necessarily believe that, and nobody will open their books in such a transparent way that everybody sees everything because there's perceived vulnerability in that. And that's just the problem is in negotiations, there's very little trust, and everybody says, this is what I really feel, and the other side says, I'm not buying it. And until they work that out, I don't know how they work this out. The deadline is today, so we will obviously keep you updated on what it means. If there's a deal today, huzzah. Let's be very clear, that's what this show is rooting for. If there isn't a deal, we'll figure out what that means coming up next. Coming up next here, though, we got to get back to the NFL and a Super Bowl contender. Big moves by the Rams. Erin Coscarelli going to join us. We'll get Erin's thoughts.
Criticism like that from a coach. In the moment, how are you feeling when that's happening and the film's on screen?
Yeah, man, I think it's you listen more to the message and not the tone of the message. I mean, I think it's actually better to get called out than to not, because it shows not only like you're not worried about getting your feelings hurt. Like they're not worried about hurting my feelings. And that's something I love about our coach. Like he's not really worried about hurting your feelings. He's going to tell you, shoot it to you straight. And for me, like I've always thrived under coaches that do that.
We are ranking the biggest robberies in MLS histories, the players who looked at their team owners and said, thanks for the cash, and gave absolutely nothing in return. If your team is on this list, we are very, very sorry. Danielson, FC Dallas. His contract was for $879,000.
If you're watching this, look at his photo. He don't even look interested to be there in the photo.
With 10 appearances, he effectively got nearly $100,000 per game.
I'm sitting there watching Unreal, and they're talking about you in WWE at the Royal Rumble, just being thrown into the ring. You ever getting back in the ring for one of those opportunities again after that injury?
Man, I don't know. I mean, we got WrestleMania coming up, so you maybe see me in there, you maybe not. I'm just not trying to get beat up, but we'll see. We'll see. Like I got beat up too much times. My body can't take that anymore.
Little teaser from the one and only Nate Diaz, unfinished business. And then he expanded on that on Twitter and said, I'll see you soon. I'm coming.
What about Dustin? Dustin versus Nate. Big fight. That could be a co-main or a main for a big fight card.
One that we always wanted to see.
One that Dustin has said, that'll get me out of retirement. The UFC could use him more than ever. They need stars now.
The Rams signed Chiefs corner Jalen Watson to a 3-year, $51 million deal with $34 million guaranteed per multiple reports, solidifying a solid secondary, remembering that they gave Trent McDuffie a 4-year, $124 million extension. So we are talking about big money that has gone all over the place for the Rams. And to join us now, to break it all down, Erin Coscarelli, host of the Believe Rams podcast. Erin, the Rams, Watson, McDuffie, at this point, rebuilding the entire back end of the defense. Did you expect that coming into this offseason?
Yeah, of course. And hi, guys. How you doing? Staying sane during the free agency frenzy. It's nice to join you this morning. Yeah, the Rams have been busy. But, of course, they're going to be busy. What have they, trying to sort of come from what happened last season, the NFC Championship game? They're all in, and that's what this signifies. If anything, their biggest issue was the secondary, that and special teams. So putting all the chips in with two proven guys, one of the things that was really interesting, which Jim Les Snead said, he goes, we want to have already penciled in a starting lineup heading into the draft. So they have their guys already. They're not desperate. They're not reaching. That's why they get guys like Puka and Kyron in the draft. They're picking guys that are culture guys. And the thing that was really interesting that Jay Glazer said when he was with McVay last week, he said, McVay, was very excited about the McDuffie signing, of course, about this new signing here. They want to make sure they have guys that are already proven. And Jay Glazer said, he's like, why? Like, draft stock is great. It's good to have. It's leverage power. Obviously, they got an extra first-round pick with the Atlanta deal last year. But these are unproven guys. They want someone they can count on in the secondary. And bringing two guys from the Chiefs, now under Jimmy Lake, who's a new coach there, new DB coach, to me, it just makes a lot of sense if this is a team that is currently like rebuilding, but also contending at the same time. Their biggest issues last year were in the secondary. They made Bryce Young look like Peyton Manning of old. So they really needed to shore that up if they want to get beyond the NFC Championship game. And guys, I don't know if you know this, but the Super Bowl is in LA this year. So it's a big year for them.
I knew that they were going to take that personally. And it kind of felt like Matthew Stafford was taking a little bit personally. Super Bowl in LA next year may have been just a little bit of the reason why he decided to return next year. But with all of these free agent signings and the moves that I'm sure are to come over the next coming days, how differently do you feel about this Rams team waking up on Tuesday morning than you did pre-free agency?
I have always thought that this team had what it needed to get beyond the NFC Championship game. If it weren't for an awry 2-point conversion, the Rams at Seattle, in my opinion, that was the Super Bowl. And to me, the NFC West is now the strongest division. It was the strongest division last year. I always believed that this Rams had the firepower, the talent, the roster. I want to say they spent the second least on defense last year. They really had to kind of navigate some free agent moves, bring in some guys, kind of do a little bit of patchwork. There was injuries at the safety position. They love Quentin Lake. But now, they're just shoring up the most important part, because I think, if we want to talk about even just the offense, Tyler Higbee, who a lot of people thought was going to retire, just signed for an $8 million, 2-year, $8 million deal. And a friend of mine who was a tight end in the league, I'm like, what does this mean? He's got injury issues. Like, of course he's not going to retire this year. They have so much depth, even at the tight end position. What does that say? That means they're going to run the ball. They're going to protect Matthew Stafford. And this is the year. I think that guys are going to take a little bit less. Let's say maybe Stafford might rework his deal. I don't know about that for sure. Devontae has a very big, cap hit this year. These guys want to win. They tasted it. They were so close last year. This feels like this is going to be the year, because we don't know how much we can keep these guys together with their certain, expensive kind of contracts, taking away from the other issue that's so important to remember about LA. They also have to figure out who the next heir apparent for Matthew Stafford is. Do you see how complex what they're doing in LA actually is? Like, they have to protect the future while contend for the present.
Speaking of that next quarterback, I mean, they do still have a first-round pick. Do you think that the Rams at this point will be looking at a Ty Simpson, or are they just going to punt on the quarterback situation entirely until the future?
I don't think they can afford to punt on a quarterback. I think they really have to bring a guy that makes sense, fits the system, gets some grooming and understanding of that offense if and when Stafford does decide to hang it up. But yes, Ty Simpson is certainly the quarterback discussed and talked amongst the sort of LA beat writers as a nice fit. And I heard rumors about Joe Burrow. The thing that's interesting about what I see when I'm at the facility every single day, in terms of the connection between McVay and Matthew Stafford, these guys are essentially like the same age. They almost have a brother relationship. So whereas the Jared Goff McVay dynamic was different, that's the other thing that's going to be interesting, is it's most likely going to be this year where they have to look to the future. And then they have to say, like, hey, Matthew, this is going to be the guy we kind of need you to make into you soon, when and if you decide to leave us, because they want Stafford as long as Stafford's willing to play. Now, will he play like a 37-year-old coming off an MVP? We don't have a lot of data for how much quarterbacks drop off in terms of talent after an MVP campaign now at the age of 38. So Stafford does crazy, incredible, elite. And he's going to get most of his offensive playmakers back, if not all of them, really. So that's what's interesting. The next guy has to be really smart and really get in with that system that the Rams are sort of already building around Matthew Stafford.
You brought up Joe Burrow there. We saw that tweet. It was some Colin Cowherd gossip conversation about Joe Burrow potentially getting traded to the Rams next season. And look, I know it's gossip time of year, one of my favorite times of year, but what do you think is the actual possibility that we could see Joe Burrow in a Rams uniform in the future?
Honestly, nothing surprises me. anymore. Like literally nothing surprises me anymore. I'm not going to like add flames to the fire, but why I think it could make sense is potentially, I mean, obviously they did an interesting sort of, trade with a Stafford where, McVay really wanted what Stafford offered in terms of just how smart, not only talented, but Matthew Stafford is essentially like another offensive coordinator. I mean, the joke this past season, during some of the media coverage was that McVay would keep going, like telling him the plays. So this guy really needs to be smart. Now, can we get a guy in the draft and like raise him quickly and they have all of the football IQ and understanding, and not to mention the humility? The other rumor that was interesting was Tyreek Hill. I'm like, I just don't see that as a culture fit. They want someone that represents the Rams. So they want high character. They want high IQ. They want high emotional intelligence, all the things that the Rams really have, navigated uniquely with different personalities, right? Think about even the Puka Devontae dynamic. Puka gave Devontae his jersey number. So there's so many things that this is why it's also my favorite time of year, because we get to dissect why we think Joe Burrow might actually make sense for the Rams. But we just don't know. And I know that the Rams, really want Stafford as long as Stafford can stay. But what Stafford brings to this offense is essentially irreplaceable. But so was Aaron Donald on the defense. And they tried, they brought in two guys to kind of essentially replace the one Aaron Donald in Braden Fisk and Jared Verse. So look, anything's possible is all I'm going to say.
So one thing that I think is interesting about the Rams is we always say F them picks, and they made that phrase famous. I get it. 9 out of the last 10 years, they've traded the first-round pick. If you look in the last decade, no team in the NFL has actually selected more players in the NFL draft than the Rams. So they actually aren't F them picks. They're just wildly successful outside of the first round. How? What are they doing that nobody else can figure out?
Yeah. I mean, look, it's kind of what Les Snead said earlier, right? Like they come into the draft with a draft already, essentially their roster, their starting lineups penciled in. So they know they're not desperate. They're not reaching, it's almost like if you're like going out on a date and you're like, I'm already good. Like, I don't need to like this. My life is already solid. So I'm good here. This is what the Rams have done. They're happy with their starting lineup. And if they can add in some competitive edge, firepower, extra depth, they're going to be happy. And that's why, I think teams that go to the draft are trying to potentially fill voids. And you're taking so much effort and energy on a guy that's not necessarily proven in the NFL. I mean, take Terrence Ferguson. A lot of people, that was our Rams tight end second round pick, but it was their first pick in last year's draft. Only had 11 catches. A lot of people are like, oh, he's a bust. Trying to transition into the NFL and truly be developed to be trusted. Jarquez Hunter was, I want to say, third round pick for the Rams, a running back, and really didn't see the field. So it takes a long time for the Rams to feel comfortable with these young guys. So if there is already a proven free agent guy, like obviously they have McDuffie and Watson now, they know these two guys work together. That means for them in the drafts, they can hit on guys and not reach because they fit the culture. They fit his system. The coaches believe in them. And really it creates sort of a funnel of healthy competition. The tight end position, the thing that's unique about the tight ends is obviously when Puka went down, I want to say it was the Baltimore game, McVay had to diversify the offense. That's when we saw this 13 personnel explosion. And the thing that McVay would always say during his press conferences when that was all going on is these guys root for each other. And I think the uniqueness that the Rams sort of have is that while there's some stars on the team, there's no ego, or at least that's what McVay tries to remove from inside the locker room. And I think that's a healthy thing moving forward when you're going through adversity or struggles. And so I think, guys like Kyron, who was, Walter Payton Man of the Year nominee, they like high character that fits within the culture of the Rams.
So we're going through free agency. The draft is just over a month away. What are some of the top remaining positional targets for the Rams?
It's interesting because I think they still want depth at the cornerback position. So I foresee them maybe later rounds still adding depth in the secondary. Obviously they're going to, I'm assuming, quarterback, unless Joe Burrow. No, I'm kidding. Quarterback for sure. I would imagine we're gonna see quarterback. Offensive line can get some depth there. Rob Havenstein retired this offseason. And wide receiver, it's funny because at that 13 overall pick, a lot of people talking about it, becoming an offensive position now that they've sort of backfilled their secondary and some of those issues in the defensive back room with McDuffie and Watson. They signed a long snapper. Remember, special teams was a big issue for the Rams this last season. The muffed punt by Xavier Smith during the NFC Championship game. They want to make sure they clean up all of those mistakes, because that's just, that's going to cost you. So I really feel like they're going to probably look at wide receiver, get some depth in the secondary still. Offensive line always can be obviously protected with Matthew Stafford. They're going to, I imagine, run the ball a little bit more and really go all in on sort of building this team for 2026 Super Bowl.
You guys can follow her on Twitter, X at Erin Coscarelli, and then check out Believe in Rams, the podcast. Erin, we really appreciate your time this morning. Thanks for the expertise. Thanks for hanging out with us. Congrats in advance on what looks like it's going to just be a great season for the Rams.
Yes.
Thank you guys so much for having me. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Erin.
It's great stuff from Erin and great stuff from the Rams already. We're going to give you some winners and losers from free agency as the chaos continues. We'll do it next on Yahoo Sports Daily.
Well, one of the things, too, that keeps coming up, I keep hearing, and it kept coming up in response to my story after the hearing and during the hearing, is, hey, why doesn't he just go pro? Imagine being a college kid and making $5 million plus.
It's pretty easy. It's just money, guys. It's guaranteed money. This is probably, for most of these individuals, the last time they can make this much money playing the sport.
How can I sit here in one breath and say the sport is broken when it looks like the audience is more pleased with the sport than ever?
It's not broke. It's just we've been drinking out of a fire hose for 3 years. But it can't just be pay them, kick them off the team, next guy, next team. I worry about these kids' long-term health and what they're going to do with their lives when they're 26 and 27, when they have no roots at any university.
James Rodriguez is reportedly joining Minnesota United. The main thing, as a fan of the league, I would just be excited to see him play. And then Minnesota against NYCFC, get to go see James. And what if that game is at Citi Field, bro? Queens is going to lose their mind.
It's going to go nuts. Astoria and Jackson Heights will be empty. There will be 3 Uruguayans, 4 Argentinians, and 6 Mexicans in all of Jackson Heights going, what the hell's going on? Where is everybody?
Admittedly, I'm a huge fan of Travis Hunter as a prospect. Do you have any sense of what his growth is going to be like, where he might be playing more and more, what his role is going to look like, especially on the offensive side?
The way he is, his personality, I think this injury in his rookie year is only going to just make him better. He was starting to really get going on offense, and we were starting to click. So who knows what the rep count looks like, but I know he's a special receiver when he gets the ball in his hands.
The Ravens lost 7 players on day one of free agency. You see the names there, some big names. 3 of those players headed to the New York Giants that have taken out. I can't imagine why that would be happening. And then also, of course, Tyler Linderbaum in what was one of the bigger signings of the course of the day. As we take a look at some of the biggest winners and losers, Caroline, it's hard not to look at a Ravens team that we understand. Jesse Minter comes in as the head coach. That's a much different role than being a defensive coordinator. So you have a first-time head coach. You have a first-time offensive coordinator. You have a lot of change in Baltimore. And now, only days after bringing in Max Crosby, which I think had everybody sort of in their good feels for Baltimore, now it feels like we're watching at least core pieces of the roster just be ripped away throughout the beginning of free agency. It's hard not to feel right now like things feel a little bit unsteady in Baltimore.
There are definitely a lot of questions. At the head coaching position, we'll start with that. I know everyone's really excited about the change in Baltimore, but there is no guarantee when you go from a guy who's coached a lot of football and won a lot of football to a guy who's never been a head coach before in the National Football League. I think what should give Ravens fans at least some solace and comfort is the fact that, yes, you have a change at head coach, but you don't a general manager. And I think I do, and we all view probably Eric DeCosta as one of the most trustworthy and best general managers in the National Football League. So when you change head coach, especially when you go from a special teams kind of more galvanizing type of head coach in John Harbaugh to a very defensive-minded head coach in Jesse Minter, you're going to have not only a system change, but that brings a personnel change as well. I always believe that you don't get better by re-signing your same players in free agency, but you do get worse. You could get better by signing new players, drafting new players, bringing in new talent, but I do think that you can get worse by leaving roster holes and roster question marks. Now you have, one big exclamation point bringing in Max Crosby. That definitely makes the Ravens defense better because I said that Max Crosby makes 32 teams in the NFL better. But I think it's fair for Ravens fans to be cautiously optimistically concerned. That's where I would land right now with the Ravens. Still only day 2 of free agency.
Yeah, look, 100%. And there's no reason we could take either way, right? I say this all the time. You can either apply universal benefit of the doubt or universal lack thereof. So certainly if you're a Ravens fan, you're looking around and saying, we brought in Max, that's going to work great for us. We got one of the higher regarded young head coaches in Jesse Minter, who's going to be the next Mike McDonald. Like, you can stack all of these. We still have Lamar. We still have most of our offensive pieces. Like, it's pretty easy to find positive things to think if you're a Ravens fan. It's also pretty easy if you're not a Ravens fan to look around and say, man, like, there are going to be some pieces they need to figure out, right? So Harbaugh poaching some talent to go to New York makes sense. That's just sort of what happens. So yeah. I don't know yet. It's so early to call anyone a winner or loser. I hate to really pile on. It just feels like there are question marks in Baltimore. That being said, give me a winner so far in free agency.
Expectations aren't going anywhere.
100%. No, I mean, Harbaugh's gone because they expect Super Bowls. So you're right about that. Give me a winner for you so far.
The Rams secondary. I mean, we just had Erin Coscarelli come on and break down this Rams offseason. Where there are question marks in Baltimore, there are none with the Rams, because we talked about this Rams team this past season. There are really only 2 glaring holes. They needed to upgrade special teams, and they needed to upgrade the secondary. Aaron brought up how Bryce Young looked like peak Peyton Manning at times, and it's true that the Rams lost some of those late season games, and it felt like they sputtered a little bit late in the regular season because the secondary just simply could not hold up. Now, I always believe that your secondary benefits from a great pass rush, and that's exactly what the Rams have. But a really solid secondary take some of that pressure off of the secondary, from their pass rush to get home on a consistent down-to-down basis. So what do? You bring in Trent McDuffie. So what do? You bring in his former Chiefs teammate in Jalen Watson to upgrade your secondary. You overhaul the secondary coaching staff. So a Rams team that has a lot of continuity from this past year, obviously Matthew Stafford coming back, obviously retaining a big part of that offense. The Rams also just re-signed Tyler Higbee in free agency. You're upgrading the one position group that was a clear liability for the Rams last season. Huge win for that position unit. But what about you, Fitzy? Who's a winner?
I'm going to give you two. I'm going to start with Jeremiah Love.
Ooh,
I think, why am I giving you a draft running back that's a winner? Well, we saw two teams picking high in the draft take running backs at an elevated cost. So New Orleans goes out and acquires ETN, not a cheap contract. Kansas City goes out and acquires Kenneth Walker III. To me, that just screams the fact that they right now would be picking 8th and 9th. That screams, oh my God, Jeremiah Love ain't going to make it to us, because cost control on a running back is still a real thing. People absolutely love Jeremiah Love. So I believe that if New Orleans or Kansas City thought that there was even a chance that he'd be there by 8 or 9, then they don't make the moves that they've made. This tells you that in Indy, where speculation runs loud, they got a real clear indication that one of these teams picking, whether it's the Titans or the Giants, one of these teams picking 4 or 5, I think, are going to be squarely in the Jeremiah Love market. My prediction only gets hotter and hotter as we go on this. I don't think he makes it past 5. I'm not even sure he makes it to 5. That's how coveted I think this back's going to be. And I'll also add Kenneth Walker III and the Chiefs because, frankly, again, I was at the gym. I'm lifting some weights, and all of a sudden I hear this, and I said some things I can't repeat on the air when I found out Kenneth Walker III headed to Kansas City. This genuinely solves some of the biggest issues that the Chiefs have. I don't think they just got a good running back. I think they got a superstar. You know how much of a fan I am of Kenneth Walker III and his running. I believe that he is absolutely a game changer. The Seahawks are going to miss him next year, and the Chiefs are going to love having him. This just became a problem for the rest of the AFC West to shut down Kenneth Walker III in that offense. This is a huge signing that I don't think we can put enough weight on. So absolute winner for me in free agency.
Love all the running back love there. When I saw the Kenneth Walker move, I thought, okay, in football, we need to have the same thing that we have in government, that we don't allow certain mergers and acquisitions. The government will block certain things just to make sure that, like, hey, there's a free and fair marketplace out there. Where is Roger Goodell to say, no, I'm blocking this move because it makes this team too good? Like, oh, the Chiefs was out in the postseason one time in the middle of their dynasty, and what do they get rewarded with? The reigning Super Bowl MVP. And I've heard this move criticized a lot of, look, and it's fair question marks of Kenneth Walker was splitting carries in the regular season. Yeah, but we saw the best version of Kenneth Walker in the postseason. And, Kenneth Walker's not going to be a pass-catching threat. So what? So what? He fills a need. Clearly, the Chiefs were lacking in the running back position last year. So what do? They go out and get the best running back available on the free agent market, that he alleviates some of that pressure off of Patrick Mahomes in the passing game. I love this fit. I think it is perfect, tailor-made, but it is also just kind of unfair to the rest of the league. But Fitz, I don't want to be all hunky-dory and all sunshine and rainbows, because we know that free agency is not all sunshine and rainbows right now. And look, everything can change. It is only Tuesday. We have a long offseason ahead of us. I think the Eagles right now are losers. They got outbid by the Carolina Panthers for Jalen Phillips. They lose Reed Blankenship to the Houston Texans. They lose Nakobe Dean to the Raiders. That's a massive, massive part of their defensive production from last year. That I think you get some question marks in Philly.
Yeah, in Howie we trust, but Howie's going to have to do a lot of work right now. You see Mike Garafolo there saying the Eagles felt confident they could get something done. Jalen Phillips gets enormous money. This is what happens. I mean, as confident as people are about culture or about what's behind the scenes or playing with your friends or staying where you are, the minute somebody hits the open market, you can get outbid. And there are certainly several teams. Look, good football teams yesterday didn't do a lot. I'll add Seattle to that conversation of somebody so far that looks like a loser. A lot of poaching happening right now. But it is early, and Howie, I trust. But Howie, boy, just when you thought he didn't have as much work to do, now we're just sitting around wondering what he's in the lab getting ready to do. The free agency frenzy will continue throughout the course of today, and we will get you caught up on everything you need to know. We will be back tomorrow morning right here at 9 a.m. Come hang out with us. She's Caroline Fenton. I'm Jason Fitz. Thanks for watching Yahoo Sports Daily. We will see you tomorrow morning.